Okay, so we're putting the skids on, quite a moment. Now, these skids, classic example, you come along, you think, yep, we're all going very well here. So you stick these in and you go, okay, and you're like, hold on a minute, these pegs are massive. They're a little bit too big, they're a little bit too long. So what's that doing is it's sort of interfering and not making a perfect joint. So you can either just sand a bit of height out, so make sure you're coming in from the correct angle, just to lessen it and smudge them down just a little bit, or you could just take a knife to it and cut them down, but definitely need to take a bit of height out of these just so they make a nicer slot in. Okay, so test fitting as always, absolute must. Okay, we're going to use a quick set glue, good blob in both slots. Okay, and then this rear one is the important one, to be honest, because this one does all the work, and then the front one to just follow in. Okay, we're just going to hold it there just for a second or two, roughly in place. This is enough to make it bite, but then you should be able to maneuver it afterwards, and that's a great thing with quick set. So straight head on into camera, you're looking to have the feet in the sort of right position, and actually it doesn't look too far out. So what we're going to do then is just going to re-glue, and we are actually going to weld these up, which we'll talk about in a moment. So I'm just going to double glue the areas, sanding sponge, bang it down. And then this guy with the tail in there again fits on here pretty much perfectly. So the weight of it is taken by the sponge, but the feet touch the floor. So that way we can guarantee we've actually got the correct spread and the helicopter's level. Because the trouble is with these types of helicopters, if you haven't got the feet in the right position, and then obviously with the actual lean for one side, it's a massive thing because the rotors will make it look even more. So it needs to be down, it needs to be square. So we've got the tail on here, the skids, but actually the skids are just holding now, they're just literally touching, they're flat, they're down, they're level, that's exactly what we want. Okay, so then we know once this is dry, we can take the sponge away and it will be fine and in one piece. But it is quite important just to make sure that you've got the right correct height, and to be honest, it's a pure fluke that the sponge is exactly the right height for what we're after. So we've got the perfect spread, the perfect load onto it. So what we're going to do now is leave that for around about an hour to totally go off. Once it's gone off, we're going to weld it up with a little bit of styrene filler just on the insides to make it super strong. And also I've noticed on one side, because I've already put one on, there's a tiny little gap, and it'll fill that gap all at the same time. Once that is in, what we can do then is do a little bit of tidy up work. So we're going to come in, we're going to sand up down the back, do the joint, we're going to put in the re-riveting, because obviously we've obliterated quite a bit of it whilst we've been cleaning things up with this one, so we can do that, a little bit of rescribing, things like that. And then what we can do is think about actually putting onto the glass work, getting that masked up, putting it in, masking it all over, making it all, you know, sort of overspray proof so we don't get any overspray inside the glass, and we can go through the sort of motions then of primer, paint, and thinking about weathering. Okay, so we have got a lot going on, and when we say a lot, we mean quite a lot. Okay, so we're doing this slightly out of order. Let's explain what we've done. So, helicopters all together, looking really well. Tail boom is on, and we've sanded that in, no problems at all. We've had a look around, and we're all good. One of the decisions we've had to make, though, is this cover at the back. Now, to be honest with you, the engine, it's all right, but it's not all there, and I don't think it's going to be good enough to show off. And this is one of those things I often talk about, is that the amount of time and if it's worth it aftermarket versus yes, no. And many times you can just obviously liven things up with a little bit of wiring, stuff like that. Two stumbling blocks. One is going to take a lot of scratch building to put that into something I think is looks right. At the moment, it's just a basic lump, and as you can see it down in there, there's not a great deal going on. Okay, you need a lot of wiring. I need to get better diagrams, and unfortunately, for this specific engine itself, it's very difficult to get that. I can get normal sort of Hughes 500s, things like that, but there are obviously slightly differences in here. Also, the exhaust, getting that all to fit up and everything as well is a little bit of a handful if you're going to go down that route. So what I've elected to do is actually close the doors, which I don't think is a bad thing. And again, it's one of those things, you know, the engine's in there, they've done a little bit of work to it, repainted the back area, things like that. But actually, I don't think it's going to be spectacular enough to show, okay? So when you come along with the door covers and you put them in, you've got these big pins, and the pins get in the way and they don't really go. I think, again, it's great for having it open, but from our point of view, we want those closed. So what we're going to do is very lightly sand these pins off, okay, and flush it down. And then we can actually think about getting this in. And to be honest with you, it's not a bad fit once it's all in. Okay, it just takes a little bit of springing around to get in there. And again, it's one of those areas where actually you've got a tiny little bit of a tab issue there, and I'm wondering if we can just be very careful and perhaps just nip it out with a blade rather than going in with a, as I'd like to do, a sander. That's what we're just trying to do. Might have actually just got it in. Let's try that again. Oh, that's handy. That's it. Perfect. Okay, so that's that good. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to hold it just there, lightly in position. It's not in the proper position yet, but it's good enough to get some glue in. Just going to come in with some extra thin and let the capillary action disappear off and work its way round. Okay, just a couple of little light passes just for the moment. Okay, and then what we do, once it's got some glue and it's biting, we can just walk it slightly in position. So I think, to be honest, this underside one, this needs to come off. So we're going to use the engine and just nudge it slightly into position. Let's just nudge again, just to push it out. So those doors are flush all the way around there, like that. And actually, I think that's a far nicer fit than we had before. And then what we'll do is, once the actual doors are glued and nice and everything else like that, then what we'll do is we'll just come in and close them up. Now, to be honest, we've got this little guy just down in here, and it's supposed to go on. You want to remove this little tab just on the side here, this one down by my finger, because otherwise it fouls it. Take that off and it'll fit very, very nicely. Okay, so that is in there, and actually the position of that is all good. I think it's all right, and then that can be drying. Okay. The biggest difference we've probably seen just before now and other side of the in part 3 is this. Now this we've taken off. Technically, it was always that little thing about, I had reference videos. I thought the MH series had the actual fast ropes, for want of a better word, off the sides, yeah, the AH one didn't, but I've got an AH one with a couple of rocket pods. I saw it hasn't got the guns and all the rest of it. It's just 2 rocket pods on there. On the outer one, 7-shot rockets with these on as well. So who knows? Again, the trouble with this is, because it's Special Forces aviation, that type of thing, they are chopped and changed all the time. Various different variants coming out and not. The big difference is, like the gunship version, the modern ones have a camera underneath, things like that, forward-looking infrared. Obviously this one probably used nods, you know, night vision goggles, things like that, rather than that type of technology. So again, it's finding the balance and finding an aircraft that matches yours and then following through. So what we've done, as you can see here, we've sanded those off and we've taken all of those off. Now, the other big thing is obviously the glasswork coming in to put this in. So to be honest with you, I've been fiddling around with this for about an hour, and when this comes in, it fits in, and it fits now like a dream. I'll be honest with you, to start with, it didn't. What it is, it's this light here in the middle fouls on the front here, okay? And what it does, it pushes it off. It will not allow it to actually push on there and just sit in there nicely as it is now, okay? I tried it with a little bit of glue, and to be honest with you, about half an hour in, I'm thinking, I'm just not happy. It's got to be something I can do. So we pulled it off. What I've actually ended up doing is, I don't know if you can see it, over my shoulder in here, and if I just take it out, you guys can see, in my little pillar drill here, I have this little guy. Now this little guy here is a diamond. Yeah, it's only a cheap diamond. Don't think diamond's expensive, but it's a drum bit. And because it's diamond on the bottom and flat, because I used the drill on the pillar drill was like this, and literally I just put it in, held it underneath, and ground the height down. And I probably only went, I don't know, 3/100 of a mil. It probably wasn't even half a mil, to be honest. So that way, this now, because it clears this front area, means that the glass work just comes in and with a little bit of, I wouldn't say persuasion, but a little bit of positioning, sits in there now, and actually, hopefully you can see, is pretty seamless all the way around. Once it sits in there, there's a tiny little gap just on this side, and some of this is born out of, I don't know if you can see on this door, but when I push the door in, there's a bit of a bounce to it. So what you need to do is sort of push it in, but you can see it's in there now. It's sitting in there beautifully, no problem at all. But this door, you might notice how it pushes in. This is the trouble. So what we need to do is just push that in a little bit and then get the glass work and put it in. But to be honest, because I'm doing other things on this now, this is going to be one of those jobs. I'm going to PVA glue it, keep an eye on it, and then leave it overnight to totally dry off. Okay, so that's what we're doing with that one. All right, so we're coming along very nicely there. The other thing as well is we put the rotor system together. To be honest, it's a nice system. This is just straightforward, and it's a circle. Let me get this one in. It's as simple as this. So what actually is, you've got this A46 just sits here, and these push in. You've got a little flat, so it's like half a circle. So it's flat on the bottom, and then obviously they're still cantilevered down. And then what happens is, this little guy just comes up in here, okay, and fits underneath. And then on top, we've got the flat area that's going to fit in there. So this little guy then, again, just being a little mindful because we've got various wet objects on the go underneath there. But this then comes in, sits in, rotor system sits on the top, and actually it's a really nice fit. Everything fits in there, it goes in there very nicely and all the rest of it, and I'm very happy of how that goes. And again, there's literally a disc goes on the top, that takes care of that, and that one fits in there just like that. Okay, so as that bottom is drying off, we'll just pop this in now. So this is the part we were talking about. We're just going to sand off this little guy on here because, to be honest, it fouls. Okay, you don't have to take it all off, but you just want to take the majority off, and then it goes on this cover half and half under here. And then what we'll do, we're just going to pre-glue this section to the rear, and what it is a exhaust scoop. Okay, so we just get that roughly into position, and then we're just going to walk this guy in. Okay, now we've got a little gap just down here at the back, but we're going to take care of that with a little bit of filler and pop a rescribing line down in that. Okay, so they're both in, and what we're going to do is just going to nudge some of this in and just see if we can get this to close up, which we can. Actually, I think we're just going to go for the nudge effect here. So what we're going to do, we're going to add a little bit more glue because we didn't over glue all of this. A little bit down in the bottom. Okay, and we're just going to hold those together whilst that glue goes off, and that will complete that under section down in there just like that. Okay, so that's that bit basically coming together. So we're just going to let that do. Do not do that, fingerprint mark. Okay, so that's good, and just a tiny bit more just along here. And there we go, that's looking very, very fine indeed, so no problem with that. So what we're going to do now is literally just going to pop around, do a little bit of re-riveting, a little bit of rescribing. To be honest, there isn't much on there. So for that one, I'm just going to grab a few of our little wheels, just trying to get the sizes. So we've got doubles and doubles, we want singles. So just looking for the one we're looking for, 0.65, that's that one. So we've got a 0.65 riveting wheel, which actually looks about it. Okay, so down on these, this is dead simple of just coming in, lining up the holes of what you already got there, and then just rocking it over. Okay, and again, just go forward and back. And this one here. And in here, and that is literally it. It's very simple, very straightforward. I'm just seeing if we have got some very fine riveting around these areas here. So what we're going to do, we're going to pop some more in. Okay. So again, I'm freehanding this purely because I have total confidence in this, but you might want to use a ruler. Okay, so that's all good. And then last up, we've just got these here, and the reason for doing this one is because I went over them, whoops, with some glue. Just being mindful of these bottom doors, I don't want to overdo that. And then these under here. Okay, so just placing them in the original holes and then just walking them across. And when you get in there, we can go this way. This way. Okay, hopefully I'm not blocking your view. And again, the great thing with these Rosie the riveters is that they give you such good confidence just to pop these in, and what you're doing is just joining up the dots from what you can see already. Okay, very handy with that. I think we're all good. Nowhere else to go, so that's pretty handy. So that's all good. Happy with that. We can do a little bit of rescribing work. I'll do just a little bit around the top. That's going to be very straightforward. No problems with that at all. So what we're going to do, just let that back engine just dry off a little bit, and then we're going to get that glass work fitted in. Once it's fitted in, it's dried overnight, we can mask it up. We can think about bunging up all the holes and going through paint. Same time, weapons fit. So this is quite straightforward. It's just the rocket packs, and then we've got the fronts and rears. But I haven't put these fronts and rears on yet because obviously we've got to come in and sand out the center seams on both sides, or the seam lines, so we can do this a little bit afterwards. So this would be one end, but obviously if you did it now you can end up with the flat spot on the round, so it's just as nice just to let that one dry off for a little bit, and then we can do those. If you want to now, you can get on with the guns, all the bits and pieces like that, the tail rotor system and all those items, so you just up with it. This little guy here, I did think about masking it now off the sprue, which may be an option, but the thing is, what I'd like to do is see what the glue's doing, so that's why I haven't fitted that now, because I don't want to be in a situation putting it on, then when we unmask it, or glue marks. If I can see them happening, I can deal with it and get in there with a cotton bud or something just to remove it. But we will be using, as always, a little bit of crystal clear for this one. So what I'm going to do, put a bead at the top, bead at the bottom, and we'll sit this in, and then when it's got a bit of a bite, we'll use some thinned one of this, which I will show you, and we'll just come along and we'll put it in. But for the moment, we're just literally worried about the top and bottom, and I'll tell you what we'll do it now. Okay, so we've just got a little bit of this, so all we're going to do is just take a bit of this and just run it round. Remember, less is best. So what I'm doing is rotating the cocktail stick backwards as you run it through. So this is just a case of get the front, the top and the bottom bit in place. Once they're nice and those have sort of gone off, what we can actually do then is we're going to get some thinned paint, and we're going to come down. So what we're going to do just for the moment, we're just going to sit this in the top. Okay. And in the bottom, just like that. Wipe away any excess. Again, clues in the title, crystal clear. It should dry totally crystal clear. Okay, so what we're going to do, just going to put it there, and then hopefully it's going to hold its own weight, which it is, and it's not going to pop off, and actually that's not a bad seam. So what we're going to do now is let that bite all the way around. Let it bite in there, let it dry. Once it's gone clear, then we can come in, we're going to give it a second coat just to take care of any gaps. And once that's in, if you have got any little micro gaps around it, we can actually use thin down fillers just to do a quick filling job on that. But what the reason for doing it with PVA glue to start with is just so in case we've got a problem. So suddenly if we end up with a gap or a line or a seam, or it's not looking right, we can get it off and then come back in afterwards. Okay, so this is just a case of making sure we're all good at the moment. This side's a bit of a pain because it's sticking out. That's the only thing, and this is what we were saying about this. I'm just going to pull this off because I'm not liking how this is sitting. This side needs to push in, so I'm just going to put some force so this pushes in properly right down in there. And again, don't get glue all over your fingers. There we go, now we're looking better. That side's properly in. Again, it was always going to be a pain bit of this particular build. Okay, actually it's not looking too bad now. Still want it to bed in a little bit more. There we go, we're going to let that bite, and then we're going to come in and seal that up. Got a small gap under here, but what we're going to do is PVA glue that. Okay, so that's actually not too bad at all. Just going to need a little bit of work in there to get that to bite a little bit better, but it's halfway there. So let that dry, come back, then we'll look about PVA gluing it. Okay, so this is, to be honest, been drying overnight. As you can see down in here, that canopy has gone in very nicely, no problem at all. It's all in there. We've got a few little gaps running around it, but generally I think we're okay. Got a little bit of a glue mark in there, but luckily for us that doesn't know where it's going to show, and the rest of it is okay. But we have got a few little tiny little gaps and things like that. So what we're going to do is just make up a very thin mix of PVA glue. So all we want is normal water. So we've got a little bit of normal tap water. We're not going to need gallons and gallons of this. We want a nice small pointy brush. We'll probably do. Okay, we're just going to grab quite a bit of glue. Okay, I've actually probably got a little bit too much water there, so what I'm going to do is just going to get rid of some of that. Okay, and then we can just make up a thin mix of white glue. Okay, so this is crystal clear. It will still be crystal clear as long as the brush is clear. So what we're looking for is something along the lines of sort of normal milk, not as in semi-skimmed, just normal full fat milk. Okay, so you don't want it too thick, because otherwise it technically is not going to do anything. But if it's too thick, it's not going to capillarize. When we say that, the capillary action isn't going to flow round, and it's not going to have a gap. So what you want to do, run your brush through it. So, and you can see how it's clinging. So that's probably about right. Maybe a little bit thicker if I'm honest. So I'm just going to grab a little bit more, just to thicken this up a little bit more. Okay. So this is great for this type of job where you need it to be precise. You want it to be a nice job. You don't want to be causing a big mess or something else like that. Okay, but what you want to do though is to remember to let this stuff do the work. Okay, don't start brushing it around. This is touch and flow work. Okay, so what we're going to do, we've got a tiny little hole just up here. So we're just going to grab the brush, load up with just a little bit, and then we're just going to brush it in the hole, and we're just going to drag it literally all the way around. Not too much on the brush, because again we want to put this in nicely. Okay, so this may or may not take 1 or 2 or 3 coats. It'll be one of those. It's all dependent on how big the gaps are and how big it is behind the gaps as well. Okay, so I'm just going to pull this in. Okay, just dragging it round. And again, because it's PVA glue, we can clean this up with a little bit of water. So don't be frightened about going on the glass work. Okay, and as you can see there, I hopefully saw there, it grabbed it and then goes along. So see how you can go right up. So argument's sake, you've done that, and then just drag it down onto the area you want, and that will then dry just in that area. Okay, so this will take care of micro gaps. Now, I'm not saying for a moment you're going to be filling in huge gaps and stuff like that, because clearly you're not. Okay, but then once you've done, you can just come along with your brush or a cotton bud. Maybe a cotton bud might be better, just absorb some of the excess glue just on this edge, but don't touch the actual area, because otherwise it will draw it all out of everywhere you've just done. So it is that thing, keeping it quite level. All we're going to do then is let that dry, and then hopefully absorb all those areas, and that will be left with a nice solid fix. Now we fixed it top and bottom, it's just those side ones, and hopefully then it will grip that and take care of it. Again, don't be thinking it's going to be one and done. You'll be very lucky if it is. Normally what you do is put that in, come back in an hour, have a look at it. Because it's quite wet, it's going to take a little bit of time to go off. Okay, so don't be prodding and pushing it, but have a look. If you've got dips in it, then obviously give it another coat. Okay, and just carry on until you've filled in those areas. But one of those things, it's not one and done. Just keep that in mind. Sometimes it can take days, literally, of going in, doing it. But it's a lot neater than coming in with thinking things like, okay, we're going to put some masking tape, a bit of filler, we'll sand it and make a mess. This is safe, because if it does go horribly wrong, you can peel this off, take the glass out of work, clean it up and reset and start again. So again, it's that little thing about just having it in place so you can go back and fix any problems you might get. There we go, that one's done. So what we're going to do, come back in an hour, have a look, see how that's looking. If it's looking good, we'll stop. If you need another coat, which it probably will, to be honest, we'll do that. One thing, don't forget PVA glue, clean out your tools, your brush, things like that, and that way it keeps it all clean. It's cheap, you can knock up another batch, and away you go. Okay, so this glue has gone down lovely. You can see we've got some nice, good, tight grouping on this with no real problems at all, and it's taken care of all the gaps. And yeah, it needed 2 coats. So I gave it a second coat, we've gone in there, done it again, taken care of it. Just some little pinprick bubble marks. Again, it fills those, no problem at all. Just remember, it may be 2 or 3. It's not a quick set thing, but you say you stick with it, you keep filling over time, it takes care of it, and trust me, long term saves a lot of messing around if you scratch your canopy or trying to sand it and fill it, or get, you know, marks in it and stuff like that. So anyway, that's in and been drying now. So to be honest, we're coming in with masking it. Often it's a bit, you know, it's a complex shape, it's got curves on it, you want to take your time. To be honest, thin tape is your secret. If you haven't got thin tape, like I'm using 6mm, but you got one of these. This is an Infinity cutting board. To be honest, AK have just relabeled them and put one out now. So basically what you do, you come along with your little bit of 6mm, like this, you see, and then the great thing about this stuff is you can come along, line it up with one of the lines that's on here, and you don't have to be 1,000,000% accurate. You put it down like that, and then you can make, if you wanted to, a 1mm strip, literally. So we just follow this along, or you can make it perhaps a 2mm strip, so you're going to go second hole. Okay, and you can come down. So then that way you've got good options for doing this, and it's a perfectly straight line. Doesn't matter if it's slightly on the skew or on the angle. We're not trying to put a perfect one, so that's why it doesn't matter if it lines up. If you wanted a 1mm exact one for some markings, then obviously you want to be careful how you put the tape down. So down in here we've got a couple of little options in here. So we've got some thinner tape, just like this. So now what we can do is try and work out the best places to put it. So sometimes you're in this thing of like, you know, what is the best place to put this down and things like that. So don't be too upset with yourself, perhaps if you have to double mask. And when we say double mask, is like here, we've got tapes down here and we've cut the line between them. But to be honest, on this one up here, it's not too sharp. And you might see we've got a little bit of overhang. So you can use this as a mask line to tidy certain things up. So you can pop this in here. Okay, you come along with your knife, okay, and I use the push technique just so we're in perfect alignment. So I line it up against the side of the tape that's in there already, okay, and then we just put a line in there, and then hopefully this will just drop out here. I'll get this off, got tape on here already. There we go. All right. So that takes care of that, and you can tidy that up. That wasn't exactly my bestest work, to be honest. There we go, in there. And then these ones on the edges, you can then simply just come along. Okay, we want to allow a little bit of a line, and to be honest, I'm not a fan of a number 11 blade for doing this type of work, purely because it tends to not cut, like here, brilliantly. I prefer, if I'm honest, using the disposable blades than these. Okay, so we're just taking that up. There we go, that's on there, and we can do the same on this side, making sure we're happy where that all is. There again. And that's in there, then we can reuse this bit here, and we can come along just to tidy this up. Just on there. And so forth and so on, and we'll cut and repeat. The other thing, of course, you can do is that if you take a nice thin tape, because obviously the thinner the better it is for curves and things like that. And what we can do, we've got a little bit of 1mm here, so we're just going to pop this on the edge, right where we want it. Okay, and then what we're going to do is we can drag, stretch and pull, as I call it. So we're just going to drag it down, stretch. So what I'm doing is I put your finger just to hold it a little bit, and we're just bending it round the corner. Okay, and again, because it's nice and thin, it will then go in, conform to that nice tight edge. Okay, and then until you get to a really strong bend, but even on that you should be able to just hopefully knead and stretch it round corners. Again, we're going to trim up under here, but that gives you an idea, and we can bend that tape all the way round, and then we're going to come in with one across here. Okay, and this one's quite a flat area, so we can perhaps use a thicker bit of tape, but again it may be too thick, something like this, so we're just going to work out the boundary. So we're going to have to trim that over, but we can pop this across the front like this, and up. Okay, right the way through, and obviously this center section we're going to mask off the clear parts on the side of it, and we're going to go around and trimming. But that's how we go about doing things like that. So nice thin tape so you can conform it around the edges, make sure they're all down, and then once you're down, either use a cocktail stick or a cotton bud and just knead down and press down those edges to stop any overspray or anything getting down under there, okay? And that will take care of it. So that way we can mask up this glass work. I'm going to do it doors off, so when the glass one's down in here, if you were doing down in here again, exactly the same, nice thin tape, or this time it's got nice good sharp edges. You could tape the entire thing, push the edges right down in there, come along with a blade, cut it all the way around, and then just mask off around the outside of the door so the clear part is done. And you might want to just do the same for the inside as well, purely because on these, obviously you don't want it to be shiny, it would be like metal colour. I take those in. We're not going to worry because we're not going to have doors on it, so what we'll do is just put those on it, put them in, spray it, get overspray all over it because they'll be discarded and thrown away afterwards. And then the same for the rear ones. It's just going to help with the masking process when we're getting into the painting stage. So what I'm going to do, carry on exactly the same with that tape, putting it in, trimming, cutting, everything in there so we're all nice. When we're all happy with it, then we can look at putting this thing into primer.